introduction, I'm Yuki. I'm one of the Open Data Ambassadors, and I joined the program about a year ago. As my full-time job, I work as a senior analyst at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, under Analytics Division that also serves as an open data team. And it's so good to see everyone. Thank you for joining on a Friday night, and I hope you leave today's session with a better understanding of what open data is, why it's important, and how to use it. So this is today's agenda. We are going to start with a quick history lesson on New York City open data, and then we will go into how to actually use the data, including how to read the data, how to filter them, and how to visualize them on New York City open data. And I'm also going to introduce some of the use cases of tools that were created using open data. And we are going to conclude the session with a Q&A section at the end. And please feel free to use the chat function to leave any comments or questions. The chat will be monitored by Zachary and me, so we'll be able to address your questions towards the end. And the material for today's training was co-created by the Office of Data Analytics at the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation, OTI, and Civic Technology Organization, BetaNYC, who are the, again, core organizers of New York City Open Data Week. So now I'm going to talk about a brief history of New York City open data. And a lot of people think that open data is a relatively new phenomenon. But actually, the efforts to make government more transparent and accessible have been around for a while. So to better understand how we got to the launch of New York City Open Data and the passage of New York City Open Data Law, we are going to look at some of the milestones in the history. So before we go into the past, let's start with today. So what does open data look like today? And public data is available about nearly every facet of city life. And our city is actually full of data points that you can access on New York City open data. And so from sidewalks, recycling bins, parking tickets, restaurant inspections, parks, and taxi ridership. And when I was in grad school and for urban science, I used to use a lot of mobility or transportation related data like taxi ridership or bike sharing data. And now I use a lot of housing or building related data because of the nature of my job and the agency. And I wanted to ask the audience today, which New York City open data sets have you used before and in what context? And if you haven't used any data, which topics would you want to explore in New York City open data? And you can drop that in the chat or unmute yourself. There's so many data sets, so I've used a lot of them. There's school and work, but it's always interesting to hear what other people have used it because there are so many ways to use them and very specific to their jobs or projects.
I really like the tree inventory, especially as I wander around the city and want to know like how old this tree is or how large it is or what species it is. And as a former parks data person, it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I forgot to attend the parks presentation yesterday, but I hope to watch the recording actually about tree census map. Oh, I see. So DOT, that's a good one, and they have a lot of data set. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Oh, interesting. Oh, I see. Pool inspection. Oh, right. DOE data. See, like there's so many data sets that I've never even used before, and I've been using it for a while. But yes, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, some of you are probably already familiar with open data. And again, if you haven't used any New York City open data sets before, I hope that you'll be able to use some interesting and useful data sets after this session for your work or for your project. So going back to history. So first, The origin of the open data movement can be traced back to the late 19th and early 20th century during the Progressive Era, when many government reforms happened due to the wake of city scandals. And one of the reforms was the launch of a new publication called City Records, and which this published city notices, updates, purchases, and hiring. And it started in 1873, and it is still being made available today. And you can actually go and see the early versions of city records on the internet through NYU's City Record Project. And jumping some decades ahead to 1960s, the Freedom of Information Law, or FOIL, was passed on the federal level in 1967, but also by the state government as well in 1974. And FOIL made government information available upon request, meaning that if you are looking for some specific data, you can request it. And if the information exists, the government can then share it with you. And this concept of requesting information and receiving that from the government was a revolutionary concept at the time. And several decades later, in 1993, New York City released its first public data directory. And this publicized what kind of data is available in city agencies through FOIL. And this was an advancement from FOIL, because with FOIL, you had to know what kind of data you're looking for. But with the release of public data directory, someone could now see the list and read the description of what it contained at each agency. And finally, in 2012, thanks to the effort of open data advocates, city staff, and elected officials, the New York City Open Data Law was passed. And what's unique about New York City's open data is that it's a law and not an executive order or policy like how it is in other cities. And this means that New York City open data is here to stay regardless of administration. And this is a huge leap from FOIL or data directory, because the data is now made public by default, not by request. And today, New York City open data contains more than 3,000 datasets and billions of rows of data. And it is managed by New York City Open Data Team, housed at the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation. And the wealth of information is only possible thanks to the network of about 100 open data coordinators spread throughout the city government. And every city agency, office, or commission, including elected officials, has an open data coordinator. And these open data coordinators are well versed in their agency's data and responsible for working with the New York City Open Data Team to identify, structure, document, publish, update, and share their agency's open data sets. So now I'll walk you through how to find open data sets and basic navigation through New York City Open Data website. So let's go to the website. And if you would like to follow along, you can search New York City Open Data, and it's probably the first one that pops up. And when you first land on this page, you can start typing what you're looking for or interested in this search box in the middle. And you can also go to the navigation bar and click Data, where the data button is, to see an overview of more than 3,000 datasets on this platform. And you can see that users can access data in different priorities. So for example, you can see the list of datasets by agency, category, popular datasets, or new datasets. And today we are going to use 311 data to learn how to use New York City Open Data. And just quickly, New York City 311 is a government resource for assistance and general information outside of emergency situations. And I'm sure many of you know this service and maybe have used it in the past. It's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and available in over 175 languages and for roughly 3,600 government services. And the 311 is accessible via phone, website, Skype, Twitter, Facebook, and mobile apps. So first, let's start with learning how to read a dataset. And from here, I'm going to actually do a demo on the website itself. So first, when you are looking for a dataset, you can just, again, type a keyword or key terms in the search bar, or you can go to data right here and search keywords here. So I'm going to put 311. And so for 311 exercise, the top result here, 311 service requests from 2010 to present, is the data set that we want to use. So we're going to click this. And when you click the title, you will be taken to this page, and there is a lot of information here. And this page is called primer page. And this page gives you beneficial information about the data, which is called metadata. So does anyone in the audience know what metadata means or heard of it? I think some people, yes, data that describes it. Exactly. So metadata is just a term that means data about data, like what agency it's from or when it was last updated. So that's all metadata. And as you can see, the primer page has description right here, when it was last updated, how frequent it's being updated. So this one is daily, which agency it is from. So this one is the 311, which I believe is like an office or team within OTI. How many views it's got, how many times it's being downloaded, how big the data set is. So how many rows, how many columns. And here you'll see the attachment of data dictionary. And we will go through about data dictionary later in the presentation in a bit. So yes, this is a primer page, and this has a lot of metadata here. And going back to the slide, and whenever you are using a data set, it is important to know how to read a data set and to know what questions to ask yourself before opening a data set. So the first question you should ask is this the data that I'm looking for? And closely reviewing the description of the data set is really helpful to understand if you've indeed found the information that you're looking for. And sometimes the differences between similar data sets can be really subtle. So for example, there are data sets of 311 requests from before 2010 that won't show us the information we're looking for today. And the second question you should ask is this data sufficiently current? And the information highlighted here, like I explained earlier, will show us when the data and its related metadata were last updated. And the third question you should ask is, do I understand this data set well enough to start using it? And the purpose of Open Data Dictionary is to take the complexity of city government operation and translate it to public use. And understanding the data in the context of what's presented in the data dictionary is really important. So you should always review the data and data dictionary side by side before using it. And this is how New York City organizes its data dictionaries. And I would note that each data platforms or repositories have different standards for data dictionaries, and sometimes datasets don't come with data dictionaries. But the good news is that datasets on New York City Open Data always come with data dictionaries, and it is legally mandated for city agencies to provide them. And data dictionary gives you a description of each column in the dataset, since sometimes the column names are not always self-explanatory. And it can contain notes to further explain the details of how this data is created and used. And be sure to look at the expected values in the fields that you may want to use in order to explore the data. And the last question you should ask is this data too large for me to use as is? And most computers and computer programs won't be able to read large data sets. And for example, Excel will only load about 1 million rows. And if you have a large data set with lots of rows, like 311, it will take a long time to download, and it will consume lots of storage space. So on New York City Open Data, it's easy to filter down a large data set like 311 to only show the information you're most interested in, and to download just that smaller portion of data. And I will show you how to do that in just a few minutes. So to summarize, you should always make sure that the data set is what you're looking for and is sufficiently current. And you also should make sure that you know enough about the data set and that the data you're using is small enough to handle and process. I hope everyone is following along. I think that's a lot of information, but so now I'm going to do a quick demo on how to filter this data set on New York City Open Data. So here we're back on the primer page. When you're trying to see the data, you should click View Data, and you will see a table of this data set with columns and rows. It takes a little while to load. Let's see. So I actually preloaded. So this is the view that you will see. It just takes a little while to load, but this is what you should see. And in order to filter, you should click Switch to Grid View. And we recommend this method, so switch Grid View. And then when you click Filter, which is usually preloaded, it's between More Views and Visualize button at the top. A filter pane pops up on the right side of the page. And when you click Unique Key here, it just shows all the columns in this data sets, and you can base your filtering on these columns. So I am going to pick agency is HPD. So now, as you can see, sorry, I should have shown you earlier, but the number of rows or records went down quite a bit. I'm going to add another filter. So I'm going to do created date is after. So I just want to see this week's complaints that's HPD related. So I'm going to do created date is after March 12th. So like this. So now, as you can see, the number of rows or records went down again. I'm going to add another filter. This one, I'm going to add geographic filter. So let's do community board. Where's community board? Here. Let's do Brooklyn community board 1. So that's where like Williamsburg and Greenpoint is, I believe. And again, the record went down and now we only have 89 roads, and that's pretty manageable, I think. So that's how you filter the data. So you can add the filters like this, add a new filter condition, and you can filter based on a lot of columns. And it's really handy because now you have manageable data. So going back to the slide a little. So now let's learn how to visualize this data on New York City Open Data. And what's great about New York City Open Data, and I say this as someone who's been using this tool for a while, is that sometimes you just want to quickly check the numbers, distributions, or top 5 values for the data set that you're using. And you want to do this without having to export and download the data on your computer. And the good news is that Open Data has the capability to create a quick visualization, and it really does come in handy. So I'm going to go back to a demo. So we have this page that we were looking at earlier, and then here you have Visualize button. You can click it and you can launch new visualization. So what's important to note here is that filters that we just applied in the previous page do not transfer to this page. So I sometimes forget this as well, but they just do not transfer. So we have to apply filters again. So does anyone have suggestion for which agency to pick from. We can do, someone mentioned DOT, we can do DOT, or does anyone have a preference? Ooh, small business services, yes. Let's do agency is SPS. Does it show up? Sometimes this is also slow. I don't know why it's not showing. Sometimes it takes a long time to find an agency, actually.
This might be in the data dictionary, Yuki, but I don't know if SBS has too many service requests that they handle.
That's true. Maybe we can do DOT.
And I guess another question in some of these acronyms that pretty much everyone knows, FDNY, NYPD, DOT, let's say. But what if you don't know the acronym, then what
That's
should
true.
you do?
So if you don't know the acronym, I think there's a website on to check the acronyms, but here you also have agency column, which is the acronym, and you also have agency name column that actually spells out the agency name. So DSNY is Department of Sanitation, as many of you know. So this is where you can kind of check. So you can actually do agency name is. Let's do remove this. Let's do agency name. And if I type, let's see if SBS has any. I don't know if they do. They probably don't. So that's something that you can do. But for this demo, maybe I can do DOT since someone else mentioned it. So I'm going to apply DOT. Does anyone have suggestion for a community board? Can be any community board, Manhattan, Queens, Bronx. I can Manhattan 01. Great. It should come up. Actually, let's just, oof, it's really slow. Oh, here. Oh no, where'd it go? See, now it's selected. So I'm gonna do apply Manhattan Community Board 1. And I'm also just gonna do create date is this week so that we have smaller data set to visualize. So let's do this week and apply. So now we have 39 records. So this means that there were 39 311 requests that happened in Community Board 1 in Manhattan that was DOT related. So here, up here, you can see that there are so many different visualizations that you can make. So bar chart, column chart, pie chart, timeline chart, histogram, combo chart, scatter chart, and a map. And then you should always know what you want to visualize. So I'm going to actually choose complaint type so that I can group by complaint type so that I can see what kind of complaints are coming in that's DOT related in Manhattan Community Board 1. So here you can see the column chart kind of ranking all the complaint types. So it looks like street condition is the highest number of requests that came in, which is 17. And I think this kind of data can be better visualized in pie charts. So I'm just going to do a pie chart. And now you can see a different type of visualization right here. And again, street condition, traffic signal condition, and street light conditions are the top 3 complaint types that came in. And actually for pie chart, you can choose a number of slices. So I just want to see top 5 complaint types. So actually you're seeing 6 types because this part is checked. So I'm going to uncheck this to remove the other category. So let's do 5 again. So now you're only seeing 5 complaint types that's DOT related that came in this week in Community Board 1 in Manhattan. So that's how you visualize the chart. And you can actually do a spatial visualization as well using map. Again, this takes a long time to load. Sometimes I think it really also depends on the day as well, but I actually preloaded. So this is a visualization of the filters that I chose earlier. Agency's HPD, created date is this week, and community board is Brooklyn, community board 1. That's where, Williamsburg and Greenpoint are. So you can see that there are dots or markers um, on the map, and you can change the colors like this, um, design it the way you want to design. You can also choose style by value, meaning that you want to change the color or some sort of color of the marker depending on the complaint type, for example. So I'm going to do that. So now you will see different colors on different complaint type. And you can, again, change the design of it like this. You can change the opacity, point opacity. So like this, it kind of changes the transparency. So you can change point size, like you can make the points bigger, smaller, and make sure that legends is always marked usually, so that you can click here and see what kind of complaints indicate which color. So it looks like a lot of them is heat and hot water complaints, which is understandable. So yeah, that's how you map and visualize things on New York City open data. So I'm going to go back to the shared screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So yeah, you just learn how to visualize data sets on open data. So I hope you can take advantage of the future or the feature since it's really handy and it's really nice to just quickly do a visualization without having to export or download it. So now I'm going to kind of highlight some of the key tools that were made based on open data. And this is to showcase. So open data is great. You can filter them, you can visualize them, but how is open data being used in real world? So I'm going to choose some of the examples. So this is an open data project gallery, which is a library of data projects that were built on New York City open data by the public. So for example, the middle one is New York City restaurant violations, which were built on data set published by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, which includes grades for restaurant inspections. And if you want to be featured here, you can submit your own projects or you can encourage other people to do so. So this one is New York City Map Gallery, and kind of similar to the Open Data Project Gallery was like, but these tools are created by city agencies to make their data more accessible to the public. And so, for example, Population Fact Finder is an interactive tool built by the Department of City Planning, which allows users to easily create study areas or choose predefined geography like community district and examine associated population data showing the latest demographic, social, economic, and housing characteristics, and how these characteristics have changed over time. And what's interesting about this tool is that data for selected areas can be easily contrasted against New York City boroughs, community district, and neighborhood tabulation areas. And another example that's highlighted on Map Gallery is Zola. Zola is also created by the Department of City Planning, and it focuses on zoning regulation, and you can see the spatial distribution of zoning types. Next one is Boundaries Map, and this is a tool that was built by BetaNYC, which lets users explore various boundaries and spatial units, such as community districts, sanitation districts, school districts, and other political boundaries. And this is really useful if you're doing spatial data related projects in New York, since these boundaries can be confusing to navigate. And Data2Go NYC is an online mapping and data tool that brings together federal, state, and city data on a broad range of indicators, such as demographic, environmental, health, and food system. So it is created by Measure of America of the Social Science Research Council, and it allows you to create maps, dashboards, and graphs related to those indicators. And WeGov NYC is a portal that aggregates various datasets from New York City open data and provides profiles of New York City government agencies and capital projects. And WeGov NYC is built and maintained by a volunteer-run nonprofit organization, and it is extremely useful. And I think the developer of this platform actually had a session earlier this week, and I believe last year as well. So you can definitely check out the recording of them if you want to learn how to use WeGov NYC more in depth. New York City Connector is created by Coding for Impact, a student group based in New York City at Hunter College High School. And this tool pulls the location of various social service sites from datasets and compiles them together in a single map. And using this tool, you can find sites to volunteer at or where you can receive assistance from. And this interactive visualization of New York City street trees is created by CloudRed, a digital design and online strategy studio. It counts the number of trees of each tree type in New York City borough in 2005 and 2015, which are the years of the two most recent street tree censuses. And using this tool, you can compare tree types and count across boroughs within each borough and over time and see what these trees actually look like. And last but not least, How's My Driving New York is a tool that allows you to look up parking and camera violations in New York, and it was created by Brian Howell. So that concludes my presentation. I think now we can move to Q&A section. If you have anything on your mind, please, you can unmute yourself or send anything in the chat. So I think that was a lot of information with so many different tools and features on open data. So let me know if you have anything that I can answer. I think since this is a small group, I feel like everyone feels pressured to ask something, but you totally don't have to if you don't have any questions.
I guess I'll start with a question to break the ice. Yuki, if I have a filtered down data set I really like or visualization I really like, how can I share it with someone else?
That's a good question. Like a project or just data set? Sorry.
I guess on the open data site or a project just generally. I know you talked about the project gallery.
Yeah.
But let's say like the filter down through on one services request or that map you made.
Yeah, so you can actually export it, I think. You can, so if you filter down to certain, let's see, so if you have a specific, so now we have 89 rows again, like earlier HPD's complaints in Brooklyn, Community Board 1, you can export the data set here. You can export it in CSV form, Excel, all sorts of form. And there's also an API that can connect to this data set if you're actually using it directly from some other platform. But I think that's how you can share in one way. Was that something that you were looking for, Zachary?
Yeah, I think just knowing that it's so easy to export it.
Yeah.
I think is really helpful. I do it all the time. And hopefully something that others will find helpful as well.
Yeah.
And I guess on the visualization side, it's a little bit trickier, but if you create an account, you could save
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
share those visualizations with people and even like embed it on a web page.
Yeah. I do have the account, but it's like my city account, so it will look very different on the interface. So I didn't want to log in today.
I see there's a question in the chat from Jave. Is this map something compatible to ArcGIS? I used that program very briefly in an elective, and I remember the layout being very similar. I actually have a linguistics background, so I'm still learning about these cool things. And Jave, feel free if you could unmute yourself. I'm happy to have you do that, but I'm also happy to read your questions if you want to just put them in the chat. But do you want to take that one, Yuki? Or
I'm actually not familiar sure if it's compatible with ArcGIS.
I can start and maybe if I don't fully answer your question, you could clarify. But it definitely allows you to produce visualizations of spatial data, like what Yuki was showing about 311 service requests in different parts of the city in a similar way, where you can take that information, you could visualize it, you could change the colors that are being used to designate different elements. So that's something those have in common. The other thing that you can do is if you have a data set that has some sort of spatial attribute. So sometimes there's a column of geometry, it's called, sometimes it's a latitude and longitude, sometimes it's something called a shapefile, but you can export that and open that in whatever program you'd like. And that could be ArcGIS. There's also an open source free equivalent, rough equivalent called QGIS. And
Yep.
either of those will allow you to work with that kind of data. But the map you create, like the actual kind of static map, it's the data that you would use in one of those programs, not the map itself, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
see we have
totally.
someone just looking to join.
Yeah, so definitely I've used New York City Open Data in GIS before, but again, I'm not super sure if the map itself. But again, what Zachary said, I think you can embed it in on website and things like that. So not sure with our GIS directly, but definitely like open New York City Open Data sets have been used in many, many projects that were built on ArcGIS or GIS Pro or QGIS.
I put a link in the chat to the QGIS tool I mentioned, which is,
Yeah,
as I said, free and allows you to do a lot of the same things.
yeah.
And hi, Maureen, welcome. We're just actually wrapping up here. But if you have any questions about open data or how to use it, more than happy to go through that too.
If there's no question, I think, Zachary, do you want to?
Sure. Would you mind going through the
Yes.
closing slides?
Mhm.
And certainly if people do have questions that come to mind as I am doing that, please do put them in the chat or unmute yourself and share. But I talked a little bit of this before, but there's a bunch of different ways to stay involved, because really, if you're just discovering open data for the first time, we would love to continue to be able to hear from you and hear what you're doing with open data and answer questions that you have. So the next piece here is about the help desk that we run. And by we, I mean New York City Open Data. One of the things that's part of New York City Open Data's both policy and law is that if people have questions about a data set, if people see a problem with a data set, if they're not quite sure what data set to use, if they want to get into contact with an agency that maintains that data set, or if they want to request a data set, they can do all of those things through this interface, this help desk. If you go to nyc.gov/askopendata and you scroll down, you'll see this form to send us a note, and that goes to our team at the Open Data team. But then we also pass on these inquiries to city agencies that actually directly manage the data set. And through this, you can get to the person who is responsible for maintaining the data set or building a data set, so that the person who knows a ton about it. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time. So certain questions we can answer immediately, certain questions require a bit of research. And we'll try to let you know that as you write into us. But if you see a problem with open data, please tell us, because one of the ways that we fix those problems is by hearing from the public on where they find them. There's also a bunch of other ways. Some of them are things in collaboration with BetaNYC or programs that they run. So you are right now at the tail end of the Open Data Week Festival, but we will have Open Data Week next year. We've had Open Data Weeks. This is our 7th year. And for the last 2 years, I guess 3 years, including this year, you can find recordings of Open Data Week sessions. So even if you were just finding out about Open Data Week this week or today, you can go and watch those sessions from past years and see what people have talked about and learned around Open Data Week. And it's really, as Yuki was saying, like, there's data from every facet of city life and city government. And we've had sessions as well about pretty much every agency's data has had some sort of, at this point, some sort of session or examination, either from that agency or from people who use that agency's data. As I mentioned as well, tomorrow is the School of Data conference. So the thing at the top right, and sort of a concentrated version of Open Data Week all in one day. I think tickets are still available, but if you're interested in learning about what people do with open data and want to meet people in person, that's a great place to do that. And then BetaNYC, the civic tech nonprofit that we co-produce this training and Open Data Week with, hosts they call Beta Bagels Talks, and these are bringing people in from city government or from technology to talk with members of the city civic tech community. So really anyone who's interested about certain topics. They've had people from our office before. I've talked about open data before. So if you're interested, you can find out more and join those talks by subscribing to their mailing list, which I think we'll get to in just a second. But last but not least, Code for America has their National Day of Civic Hacking, which is really just a way for people to have a better sense of what data is available, what data isn't. And recently they had a day of action around mapping. I know this is something that BetaNYC directly works on quite a bit. They had an event earlier in Open Data Week about that exactly, and they're going to be working on more mapping projects throughout the year. So if you'd like to travel to maybe a different part of New York City and learn how to create a map of a piece of the city and how to digitize that, then definitely recommend that you check that out and look to join. So on the next slide, you can find some contacts here. So if you'd like to get in touch with BetaNYC, they have a bunch of different ways to communicate with people. They have a whole community of people who are really interested in data and open data. And you can find all of those at beta.nyc/links. And that would include, again, hearing more about the Beta Bagels, joining some of their mapping exercises, and just learning about things that happen around civic tech and open data throughout the year. And I think that's it. So thank you so much, Yuki, for presenting this look into open data and this bit of background. And thank you to all of you for joining today.
Thank you so much for joining.